we now?
All right, Genesis chapter 7. So the end of chapter 6, God tells Noah to build an ark, and then God's going to save him by being on the ark, and he's going to take animals and food, and God's going to destroy everything. So chapter 7. And the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by sevens, the male and his female, and of beasts that are not clean by two, the male and his female. So let me pause right there. How does Noah know what's clean and unclean?
Well, God must have told him.
That's what I was saying before. How do they know? Well, God told them.
Mm-hmm. About the okay. God.
Now, are they allowed to eat unclean animals? Well, I don't know. We don't have any scripture that tells us what they ate and didn't. Well, they don't eat any animals before the flood. It's after. And as far as we know, they can eat all animals. But there's a distinction between clean and unclean already. When Israel's given the law, Israel can't eat unclean animals. So it's interesting. It's not written, but evidently they're informed. Okay.
Anyway, why? They have a reason why not to eat unclean animals. Because they were not allowed to eat unclean animals.
Why can't Israel eat unclean animals?
Well, at that time after the flood.
No, they're allowed to eat the unclean animals after the flood. We'll see when we read the scripture. They're not forbidden from eating anything. It's Israel that's told, you're a special nation to me, and I've got some do's and don'ts for you. And one of them is you can't eat unclean animals. Why? Because I want the other nations to look at you and go, you're weird. Yeah, we're weird, but we've got the true God. So it was something to set them apart. And of course, in the time of Peter, in the New Testament, God says, I've declared all things clean. So it's a ceremonial thing. It's not a moral issue. It's not a sin to eat pork. Now, it was sin for Israel because they were a holy people. And God said, that's why. Not because there's something wrong with pigs.
But they're still, like the 7-day Adventists, they still don't eat pork.
Well, they're wrong.
Well, they think they're right.
Well, they're finding scriptures that aren't to them and trying to apply them. So, anyway, let's go back to this. Verse 3, of fowls also of the air by sevens, the male and the female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth. Now let me pause here. They're taking 7 of each animal because one of the things Noah's going to do is he's going to sacrifice some of the animals when he gets off the ark. So I don't know, it doesn't tell us, but maybe he sacrifices one pair and then the other 6 pairs are going to procreate. I don't know. It doesn't tell us what he sacrifices and what he doesn't. He doesn't sacrifice the unclean animals because he takes fewer of those. They're going to be allowed to procreate without any of them being sacrificed, I would expect. Verse 4, for yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. And Noah did according unto all that the Lord commanded him. And Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters was upon the earth. And Noah went in, and his sons, and his wife, and his sons' wives with him into the ark because of the waters of the flood. Of clean beasts, and of the beasts that are not clean, and of the fowl, and of everything that creepeth upon the earth, there went in 2 and 2 unto Noah into the ark, the male and the female, as God commanded Noah. And it came to pass, after 7 days, that the waters of the flood were upon the earth. Now, it sounds like they got into the ark a week early. But I'm not quite sure. It may be that they've gone into the ark and maybe the animals are coming, and it takes a week for all that to transpire. I don't know. Verse 11. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, the selfsame day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and all the windows of heaven were opened. Now, first of all, God records a lot of days and months in this flood account. And part of it is so that you'll know how long it took And then, of course, when the ark rests, that's the same day that Jesus is resurrected. We'll come to that. But, what's the significance of, what month it is and what day? I'm not real sure, other than you can tell how long the flood transpired by doing the math. We're not going to do that. Now, when it says the fountains of the great deep were broken up and the windows of heaven were open, of course, people want to say, well, water came up out of the earth because there's pockets of water under the earth, and then where water came down, it rained. Well, how much water do you think the sky can hold?
A lot.
To cover the mountains?
No.
No way. Absolutely no way. Now, if you go back to Genesis 1, it says that God placed a firmament in the midst of the waters. There's water above the firmament, and there was water under the firmament. Now, he cleared away the water on the earth to make the dry land appear. Some of the water may have gone into the earth, that's fine, but you have other water up on the sides, and also there's water above the heaven. So when he opens the windows of heaven, I think he's opening the water, opening this firmament, the water above it's going to come down. So one of the questions you have to ask, why is the moon cratered?
I don't know.
Well, people say meteors and asteroids have hit it. Well, where'd they come from? Oh, some planet broke up. No, not the
From the
case.
sun.
No, that wouldn't be the case.
Uh-huh.
So when God lets this water come down from heaven, he's going to open the floodgate. Well, it says the fountains of the great deep and the windows of heaven. This water that's coming down, some of it may be, because God can melt the water with his breath. There's some scripture that talks about that. We won't go look that up. But some of it will come down as ice. And the ice is going to create impact on the earth and on the moon and maybe even on the sun. Now, I guess the sun's hot enough and bright enough that the water's not going to put it out
And you think the craters come because what?
from this water that comes down from above the firmament.
And you think that the ice hit the moon that's created the crater?
Yep,
That's what you think.
yep.
Well, could be.
And of
Why
course,
think that?
the moon passes close to the sun, not like what astronomy teaches us, and so the sun's heat might melt, that water will evaporate that water off of it. I don't know. I don't really have an answer.
Well,
But
isn't meteors flying all over the space? Meteors?
well,
A meteor is big enough to hit the moon and
right. But where do they come from?
flying all over the space.
I know, but where do they come from?
I really don't know.
They just don't appear out of nowhere. So
Could be ice.
I think they are ice. Now, what's a comet? Supposedly, it's ice. Okay. Now, when they say the meteors hit the Earth and it leaves a crater, where's the meteor?
It's not around. You can't find it.
Well, that would be the easy explanation would be, well, if it's made of water or ice, it's evaporated,
It's
right?
like a big rock or something.
Well, if it's a rock, I'd expect the rock to be left behind.
Right.
Okay. Now I don't know. I've never gone and studied it, and they're not going to let me see one if one landed. But if a meteor hits the Earth and leaves a crater, you'd expect to find the rock. It might be disintegrated into fine dust, but it should still be debris behind, right?
Or maybe while it was coming down, when it got into the atmosphere of the Earth, it started disintegrating.
No, but I'm talking about one that leaves a crater. If it leaves a crater, it had to actually strike the Earth. It had to be pretty big to leave a big hole.
Now, do you think there's craters? I mean, it's a good possibility that there's craters all over the Earth, right?
Well, a lot of things land in the ocean, not going to leave a crater. The ones that land on the Earth, first of all, there aren't that many. Why? Because Noah's flood was a long time ago. Most of those things have already fallen to the Earth. Most of them fell during the flood. But what I'm saying is, ice and water came down from above where the moon is, not from under the moon, between the moon and the Earth. They're above the moon coming down. And so they're going to leave some impacts on the moon. And we see impacts on the moon today. Now, what people want to say is, well, those are from asteroids. Where do they come from? Oh, they come from this Oort cloud way beyond the solar system. Well, now you're just making up stuff. Okay? There's nothing out there. Oh, well, one of the planets broke up. No, we don't have any record of that in the Bible. So the better explanation, and I might be wrong, I don't know if this is correct. The better explanation is when this water came down from above the firmament, it came through where the sun, moon, and stars are, and some of it hit the moon. Because the moon is pretty close to the earth, whereas the stars are much further away. Now the sun, again, I don't know. The sun's hot enough that maybe any water that came down to it evaporated. Nothing hit it. I don't know. God may have controlled where the water landed and where it didn't. I don't know. The whole point is, this isn't just rain. There's not enough water in the sky to flood the earth. Now, I don't know that there were mountains as high as there are mountains today before the flood.
Why is it so important to try to figure out where the water comes from?
Well,
when the Bible doesn't say anything.
No, the Bible does say. It says that God opened the windows of heaven.
But he also said open the fountains in the earth. Or something.
Yes, there was water that came up out of the earth, but there was water that came out from the windows of heaven. So the question is where are there windows in heaven? It's not just the atmosphere. There's no. It has not rained on the earth before the flood. So how's the water getting up there?
Well, I'm not going to say something that I don't know what, that is really true or not. But I'm just going to say that
right, but
water came from heaven somehow.
First of all, science is going to deny there ever was a flood, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so is science going to do any work for you to try to explain where it came from? No. So it's up to us to try to, using what God's told us, what the feasible explanation might be. So we read in Genesis 1 that there was water above the firmament, right? It says God, remember we did this whole thing with the hands?
Yeah.
God placed the firmament in the water and then he stretched out the heavens. Well, there was still water above the firmament.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if there's a opening, a window in that firmament, God could open that and let the water fall. And it would hit the moon, it would hit anything in between, and it would come and flood the earth. Now, again, there's not a lot of detail, but it didn't just rain. There's not enough water in the sky to do that.
From the flood that came out from the earth and the water came from heaven.
So where'd all the water come from in the earth?
From under the ground, I guess.
Well, where did it get in there? How did it get in there? But some of the water does come from the fountains of the great deep. Now, my expectation is, if you look at this table, and this is the earth, there is a wall of ice surrounding this table. And if God were to melt that ice, those are the fountains of the great deep. That water can just come across the table without actually falling as rain.
How about all those icebergs from the North Pole and South Pole? They all melted.
Right, but there weren't any before. There were no seas. Well, no, there are seas once the earth is made, but we're going to see here about seasons and hot and cold. I'm not sure there was any ice like at the North Pole before that. We'll have to see. It could be, but but there's not enough to cover the earth.
Well, not by itself, but between everything. Underground iceberg, water falling down from heaven, without stopping.
Yeah.
Hurricanes, all that stuff.
So to me, there is a verse that says, "And the windows of heaven were opened."
You see how things are getting flooded now, just with rains that fall and
But that doesn't cover the earth.
No, but it floods a lot.
Even a tsunami doesn't cover the highest buildings. So, anyway, we'll move on. To me, there's an explanation, but science isn't going to tell you anything about it. And creationists are going to give you a dumb explanation. There was this canopy around the earth of ice, and God broke it and it melted. And there's no description of a canopy of ice in the scripture.
Mm-hmm.
The firmament is where the sun, moon, and stars are. It's not a block of ice between the atmosphere what they want to call outer space. So anyway, we'll move on. We can't resolve it. But now it says, and the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. Okay? In the selfsame day entered Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them, into the ark. They and every beast after his kind, and all the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and every fowl after his kind, and every bird of every sort. And they went in unto Noah into the ark, 2 and 2 of all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. And they that went in male and female of all flesh, as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. And the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased and bare up the ark, and it was lift up above the earth. And the waters prevailed and were increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark went upon the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole earth were covered. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered.
Wow.
Now, how high were the mountains? I don't know. It may be that mountains after this flood are higher than they were before, but if the mountains were as high as they are today, that is a lot of water. And it can't just have come out of the sky. And all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl and of cattle, and of beast, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man. Now the other comment I'll make about the water coming up out of the earth, this evidently continues for 40 days. So where's the pressure coming to just keeping bringing that up all that time? So the water's coming from somewhere else is my expectation. Some of it does come out of the ground. It's really the fountains of the great deep aren't really in the earth, they're under it. And you say, well, that's the same thing. No, the earth isn't a globe. The water isn't inside it. It's beneath it. But anyway, so verse 20, 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. Verse 21, and all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl and of cattle and of beasts, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man. All in whose nostrils was the breath of life, and of all that was in the dry land died. And every living substance was destroyed which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle, and the creeping things, and the fowl of the heaven. And they were destroyed from the earth, and Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. Now, here's what people will say. How could God kill all those children? What have they done? So if someone says that to you, do you have a possible explanation?
No.
Okay. Did God kill all those children?
Yes.
Did they deserve it?
I don't know. Yes, probably.
Well, first of all, as I said, everyone is a sinner and deserves death. The question is where do the dead go? See, people think, oh, how could God kill people? Well, that's not the problem. It's where do you go after you die? That's what you need to understand. And where do children go after they die? They're not accountable to sin, and they'll be saved. Jesus will pay for their sin nature, and they're not accountable to sinful choices. They're children. So, because this is in the Old Testament, they'll go to the heart of the earth, and they'll be saved. But the people that are adults, the saved people got on the ark. Okay? So all the adults that are left are wicked. And their eternity is going to be in hell and in the lake of fire. So how could God kill all those children? God spared them from having to grow up in that world. Do you know what those children are going to do when they grow up? Most of them? They're going to be wicked and spend eternity in hell and in the lake of fire. So God gave them a chance they might not have gotten. Now, it is possible they could have grown up and believed in the Lord and called on His name. But you want to think about numbers, very few, if any, would. So we got to understand God's grace, even back in this time, and what He's doing. Those people are being spared from being brought up in the nightmare that they're in. Okay?
the nightmare they have to grow up to.
Yep.